My name's Lisa Appignanesi. I'm a writer and sometime academic. We're in a period where universities seem to be under threat. This has got to do with the budgets for public finance having gone down. It's to do with the fact that the economy is sluggish. It's also to do, particularly in America and in other countries, with a kind of threat from a vocal part of the population to the actual spirit of the university and a wish to quell the kinds of fields that they think have been instrumental in provoking the wrong kind of cultural settlement. But it also just attacks, if you like, any kind of spirit of what we used to call liberalism. And all that means is that you're able to go to university and learn how to question the polity and learn how to be democratic. And some of what it questions is really the universities' attempt to make universities more accessible. Emotions are, of course, everywhere, and we're always both susceptible to them and carry them within ourselves. They're very much part of university life and part of the teaching process, although we don't forefront them either as students or as academics or as seminar leaders or discussion leaders. But they are there, and I think they're there in the very interest we show in something, in our fascinations, in the pleasures we take. They're part of the act of teaching. We used to talk about the seductions of knowledge because there's a way in which the pleasure that you take in thinking, in pursuing an idea, in pursuing a field, is actually itself an emotional thing. It is itself very seductive. Emotions are everywhere. What's happened in the world we live in today, and I think this has been one of the things I've spent a lot of time trying to think about since really Brexit, where we had a country which was divided into this yes-no. Either it was a yes or it was a no. And this opposition of yes-no makes people crazy. It's what I called everyday madness, because it's very hard to be totally on one side or totally on the other. So free speech has become a kind of shuttlecock. It's something that we throw around as a use of words, and it doesn't necessarily cover anything substantial. It's become also a weapon to be used, particularly in America, where, of course, there is the First Amendment, and it has taken on a great deal of historical weight. Free speech is very, very important, but I don't think it can be weaponized in the way in which it is being weaponized. I mean, for you to say to me, you've attacked my free speech by not allowing me to swear today in the middle of the children in my classroom, is crazy. And we all know that. Is that free speech? No, it's an incitement. It's something that makes people extremely angry and makes them feel terrible. So that is not about speech, it's about emotion. The thing about free expression is that it's always been delimited in some way. It's never absolute. It always functions within either codes of civility, that I treat you with a degree of politeness, or it functions within some knowledge that there are certain things you don't say in certain places. I think there is something worrying, very, very worrying afoot from this whole mistrust that has grown around the people who do research around the universities. And that mistrust has been fostered by the uses of the social media on the web, sometimes from elsewhere, perpetrating ideas which are actually harmful to the body politic and the body social in the West. I don't know how to put an end to this mistrust except to go on saying, in a very even tone of voice, with no emotion, look at the facts, look at the evidence, look at what you're doing to your own children, look at what you're cutting away from a world that, on the whole, was not uncomfortable even for you, even though you might have had resentment about a lot of the people. Now, there is a problem. I think people who have certain kinds of degrees in certain places at certain times can act as if they know everything and they know the absolute truth of an entire way of life. And they can scoff, or they can sound as if they're scoffing. I don't have any time for that. I don't think it's about that. I think people with worries and fears should be confronted head on and talked with. You know, and they have worries about their children. They have worries about their ways of life. We just have to keep on talking and doing in the right way. And I hope some of our politicians whom we vote for and we hope to, in our university ways to inform, will carry on being sensible and reasonable. I don't think emotions are always very useful. I don't believe in the saying, I feel emotional about this. I think in the public sphere, it is important to think reasonably. I don't think people are ultimate rationalists, because rationality is never just itself. It's also informed by the passions and by emotion and by lots of other things in your own deep history. But nonetheless, rational discourse is important. And you learn that at university because you can question with some degree of calm. Umberto Eco was a wonderful man and a wonderful writer. I knew him a little bit, and he always spoke with a voice of irony. So when he talked about the invasion of the idiots and their right to speak as freely as the Nobel Prize winner, he was also being satirical. It is true that everyone can now speak, and they often speak about things they don't know, and they speak with anger and rage, and they try and prevent other people from speaking, or they attack people who seem to have a modicum of some kind of power. And, you know, one can say they're idiots. Well, you know, they may be idiots for using that particular form of communication that has been opened to them by a media which on the whole has been run for money. Now, I believe there should be stops put on that media so that certain kinds of easy access to incitement don't exist. I do think there is something about social media, the quickness of it, the rapidity, which privileges superficiality over depth. It's true that, you know, the wise person can use it very effectively and put a proverb into it. You know, if you had La Rochefoucauld using Twitter, you would have very elegant tweets. And they would be ambiguous and they would make you think. Most social media posts are not like that. And there's a lot of circulation of language which is just about the circulation of rage or the circulation on TikTok and so on of image. And that's its own problem, and it's a particular problem for those people, since we now live in a very performative image-making epoch, who are high on performance. Again, there can be dangers to that.